Hello everyone, in this video I will be briefly going over the basics for ropes and webbing for firefighters. In this video, I'm not going to be tying all the knots. I do have rope and webbing. I will be going through and tying all the knots that are in the IFSTA fire book that you need for a Fire 1 test, Fire 2 test, that kind of thing. Those will be coming down the road, but this is just the talking about how the different types of rope are made, how to take care of it, the book kind of stuff. So first off, three major uses. There's life safety rope, utility rope, and webbing. Kind of the main differences are life safety rope is held to a higher standard. You can only use a certain kind of rope. You have to test it, inspect it. There's certain rules on if it's shock loaded, you can't use it for life safety rope anymore. It becomes utility rope. That's the stuff that you use for rescues or, climbing down the side of a building to go get someone's stuff where quite literally life is on the line. Utility rope, that can be kind of whatever rope you buy. That can be the cheap, stuff you get at the hardware store to keep on the truck to tie, random knots, ropes, knots, tie doors open or control doors, that kind of stuff. Stuff where something bad happens to the rope breaks. It's annoying, but no one's going to get hurt kind of thing. More general purpose rope. And then webbing. Webbing can be used for a lot of things. I know some people keep some in a turnout gear to make like a quick bailout harness. I use it, make a quick hose strap or hose line strap, that kind of stuff. I'll go into that once we get out in the real world tying these knots and showing what you can do with it, but that's what webbing is kind of used for. It's also kind of like a generic kind of do everything kind of material. Rope construction. Synthetic versus natural. A lot of the stuff you're going to find that on the average fire truck today is synthetic stuff. Made out of plastic, or, synthetic materials, versus natural, which is, your hemp rope, your cotton rope, your natural materials. Pretty self-explanatory. Kern mantle, that is your life safety rope. That is this stuff here, where it's got the sheath around it, the protective sheath. It's synthetic. It's kind of wrapped around itself. It's got, different layers, that kind of stuff. That's kern mantle. That's the only thing you can use for life safety. Then there's laid rope, braid on braid for all your utility ropes. That's this kind of stuff. When you think of rope, this is probably what you think of over here, where you can see the big strands that are twisted together to make one big rope. Or this, they have the kind of herringbone pattern sheath around a central core like this. That kind of thing. But the takeaway from this slide is, per the book, kern mantle is the only thing you can use for life safety. Everything else you can use for other stuff, but that's the specific takeaway here. And then webbing. Flat versus tubular. Pretty self-explanatory. Flat is just a flat piece of webbing that's stitched together, and tubular, you can see that's kind of got like a hole in the center, so it forms, a tube. Think of like a garden hose kind of thing. Like a collapsible garden hose or like forestry hose. That's kind of what the cross-section looks like. Rope, and to a certain extent webbing, care. So, prevent abrasion. So, this is if you're having to throw it over the side of a sharp corner or over the edge of a building, put like a rope roller down or a turnout coat or something to keep it from rubbing on, the concrete edge or the stone edge or whatever sharp edge it could be rubbing up against. Don't walk on it. If it's laying out in the station, you're cleaning it. Avoid walking on it because then you're going to drive little grit and rocks and stuff into it and unnecessarily wear it down. Prevent excess wear. Again, kind of talked about that already, but this is more like don't leave it in the sun all the time or it'll bleach or it'll, damage the structure of the fibers of the structure of the rope, or Don't wash it and then put it away wet and then have it get all moldy or gross, that kind of thing. And keep it clean, keep it in its own rope bag. You can mark them utility rope, life safety rope, whatever you gotta mark them as. Store the rope bags and the rope away from the chainsaws and the cans of gasoline because the fumes from that can damage the rope over time. So keep them clean, keep them dry. Inspect them. For example, if you have rope like this, when you inspect it, you look, make sure none of the strands are breaking or there's no powder showing that the strand's been overloaded and it's kind of breaking apart or it's not moldy, that kind of stuff. That's what you're looking for. With this kind of rope, because of the sheath on the outside, if it's stretched past what it should be, the sheath can become damaged, or you'll have the core in the middle and the sheath will slip, and then you have parts of the rope where the sheath is ends out here and the core is all the way back here, and you got this piece of rope that doesn't have any strength to it because the sheath slides or stretches and the core doesn't, that kind of stuff. So that's what you're looking for. And then for washing it, there's all these kind of things out there. It just goes on the end of a garden hose. You can feed the rope through it. That'll wash it, get all the grime and dust and dirt off of it. When you wash it, follow. This is a theme for the fire service. Manufacturer's recommendations. Usually it's just, a nice, easy, gentle, like dish soap, like Dawn detergent, or, something that, nothing too harsh for the rope. Is pretty much what everyone recommends, but always look and see what that brand of rope recommends. And then just dry it, out of direct sunlight, put it back in the rope bag when it's dry, that kind of stuff. Not basics. This is stuff you're going to need to know for like tests and stuff. Real world, if someone says go tie a knot, you're going to go tie a knot. But there's the working end, the standing part, and the running end. I don't know if it's on the next slide or not. Okay, that's not. So, the working end. That is the end where you're going to be tying your knot, tying it to a piece of equipment. That's the end that you are working with when you're tying something up to lift it or move it or tie it down, that kind of thing. The standing part, that's the part in the middle. It could be 10 feet long or 50 feet long or 100 feet long, however long your rope is between where you're working and your running end. Your running end is where it's going through a pulley or your other partner is lifting something, standing there pulling that end up where he's pulling it up at, or running it through a pulley or whatever. So the standing part can be whatever length. 100 feet, 200 feet. That's a lot of rope, but you get the picture. Working end is where you're tying. Running end is where you're pulling. Standing part is everything kind of in between. Basic knot parts. Bites, loops, round turn, and safety knot. So a bite is essentially folding the rope back on itself. That's what this is. It's basically the start of a loop where rope comes up, makes a U-bend, and comes back down parallel with itself. Doesn't cross itself, it's just a U shape. This is the kind of starting point you'd make for like a figure eight on a bite, something where you might be clipping a carabiner into, or maybe you're putting it through the handle of a saw to lift it, or a vent fan, that kind of thing. Loops, both of these are loops. In fact, it looks kind of like they're starting to make a handcuff knot there, which we'll get into, but just like it says from the name, just loop the rope back on itself and continues along. And then there's round turns. That's basically taking a loop and just kind of stacking the loops up on themselves. So this where you have, if this was just this bottom layer and it continued off, that'd be a loop. But since you have 2 or 3 or how many ever stacked on top of each other, that becomes a round turn, where you just kind of stack loops on top of each other. And then a safety knot, that's, again, just a little knot that you tie to keep your knot you want to keep good, tight so it doesn't slip or the rope doesn't slip or it doesn't come apart on you. I'll tie all the knots that I do tie in the knot tying videos with a safety knot, just good habits, all that, something you got to do for the test, that kind of thing. And a safety knot is just, a regular like square knot, just kind of keeping everything. A safety knot shouldn't have to do work. It's one of those things where it's there because it's good to have just in case. But if everything is right and everything goes well, the safety knot shouldn't have to do much of any work. There. Hopefully they're short, sweet, to the point. There's not a lot really to rope in the book. There's more in depth in, construction and that. I'm not going to talk about, why they choose what kind of fiber for what, because most places just use synthetic fiber for everything. So, hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully it was short enough and sweet to the point. In the next couple videos, I'll start rolling out some actual, figure 8 knots and water knots for webbing and all the knots that you're going to run across in the book and on, a state, Fire 1, Fire 2 test, that kind of thing. So, other than that, thank you for watching.